Welcome to Keep It Clean for Happier You. I'm your host, Nikki Tamboulidis. Thank you for joining the conversation on how you and I can make a positive impact on our environment at home and at a global scale. Yes, we can. Here is how. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and many thanks to our guests. I'm your host, Nikki. What are we talking about? Our topic, how to save money and reduce waste. Cheryl Baldwin and Rachel Schnabel. Welcome and thank you for being here. Before I go to Rachel, I want to mention something. Years ago when I was in school, I worked at a fast food place, which we're not going to name. And when time went from breakfast to lunch, no matter how much items for breakfast were there, they would have, you were not allowed to keep them, eat them, or anything. You had to destroy them. I don't know what the same company is doing right now with that, but going with what Cheryl is talking about, that you can donate the breakfast items to an organization, and this has to be known by everyone.
What's interesting is that businesses that end up partnering with a food recovery organization can really see in real time how much food they have that they're giving away, which of course is often, part of their revenue. And so I will mention, I'm from the Cape, and there's a Dairy Queen, and it used to be that Dairy Queen also made a lot of mistakes. People were like, that's not the sauce I wanted. And so knowing somebody who worked there would put all the mistakes in the freezer, and then they'd give them to a family member of mine who would eat and love them. Well, apparently they weren't the only ones that were doing this, right? Because they're a franchise. And so now Dairy Queen sells mistakes.
Wow. And a lot of people sell
which
mistakes
is a good thing.
At a discount.
That's right. Yeah. And so that to me is a great model when food businesses understand that there's still value in the materials that are even mistakes.
Rachel, your thoughts on companies and recycling and how they can participate?
So, unfortunately, the way that the town of Manchester is set up, we do not work with the businesses on their waste, on the waste that they create. However, we have been having conversations and trying to figure out how we can work with them more, particularly on an education outreach side, and letting them know about the different resources that are available to them. Because we don't already have a working relationship with the businesses, we're trying to figure out the best way to reach all of them. And there are a lot of businesses in Manchester. So that's something that we're working on.
We do have some resources. We had the Center for Ecotechnology under contract with us for a while. And as a result, they create a lot of resources for us. Everything from how do you review a contract with your waste hauler, to what type size bin you should be getting for your materials, to how do you partner with a food scraps hauler, et cetera. And so I definitely encourage you to check those out if you're a business, but also if you're a municipality working with businesses.
One thing that we have done, so Manchester has a webpage called Sustainable Manchester, and you can get there by going to manchesterct.gov/livegreen. If you go to that webpage, we have it broken down into different categories. One talks about the town initiatives that we've taken. Another is residential resources. And then a third one is resources for businesses. So if you go under that webpage, you can find some of these resources that we're hoping to connect businesses with. The trouble is, you never know how many people are actually finding this webpage. There's so many resources out there. It's difficult to get the word out.
It can be overwhelming because if you Google recycling, so much stuff comes out. So I think it's important that you kind of keep it for your own state or town. Mm-hmm. That would help. I don't know what you think. You do, ladies, think about keeping it your own state.
I know when I do recycling workshops, I include a number of slides about current markets for selling stuff. Mm-hmm. And it makes a number of people's eyes roll. but I intentionally bore people because I want them to understand that these materials are commodities that are bought and sold and that prices fluctuate. And that's because there's so many articles that have come out of different newspapers across the country that said, my recyclables are being thrown away, or they just throw my recyclables in the ocean. Mm-hmm. Well, in Connecticut, since we have mandatory recycling, we actually get reports from all our materials recovery facilities about how much and where they're marketing. And I can tell you our MRF operators would be really sad to hear you tell them that they throw stuff away because, you know, they process our materials. They provide a service for us. And, of course, they're going to sell these materials because that's how they make their money.
Now, this applies to both of you, but I'm going to start with Cheryl with this question. I'm sorry, Cheryl. She said I have her talk constantly. What are some problem materials everybody needs to keep out?
Well, we've talked a lot about plastic bags,
yes,
but I don't mind repeating it a few times. Mm-hmm. We did a waste characterization in 2015. And through that, we got to understand what are the heavy contaminants that are coming through the recycling stream. And plastic bags was number one. It also included bagged recyclables.
Yeah, that's important.
It is very important. So a lot of people are still being told they can bag their recyclables. A lot of times we have small mom and pop hauler shops that may not have heard that you cannot bag your materials anymore. And so we do not want not only bags, but bagged materials. Another issue is polystyrene.
What is that?
That's the industry term. You think
You're
about
getting
it.
Fancy, Cheryl.
I'm getting fancy. So
put it on a layperson.
Expanded polystyrene is also known as styrofoam. And so we don't want styrofoam cups. We don't want styrofoam clamshells, those containers like your burgers come in. Right. We don't want styrofoam pellets, and we certainly don't want styrofoam packaging that comes in packaging. So no styrofoam. The other material that comes in that makes people very sad is we cannot accept any black plastic containers. Black plastic containers, for some reason, are very difficult for the optical scanners to read.
That's so interesting. I never knew.
So the optical scanners misunderstands. They sometimes identify the container as plastic. Sometimes they think the container is metal. And so what happens is it goes into the wrong stream and it contaminates things.
So you don't accept it?
So we don't accept black plastic containers either. Other materials, I'm just going to speak on behalf of the materials recycling facility operators. No batteries. No batteries of any kind. I don't care if you think it's metal or it has plastic, or if you are putting a material that has batteries in it, that should also not go in there. Those are lithium batteries are very flammable. They may not ignite automatically, but what they do is they smolder. And so by the time it gets to the facility, after it's traveled a while, it may start a fire. And our facilities see a lot of fires, so we need to try to protect the workers and the employees that work in these facilities. Something that you would think would be obvious, no ammunition, no lawnmower blades. Apparently they get a lot of lawnmower blades in the summer. And no utensils or knives. And I'm not just talking plastic. The plastic utensils and knives are definitely out. But because they're metal, some people think that putting utensils in are okay, but they're not. Again, we have people on the front ends of these lines, and you don't want to harm them. And knives and forks and things coming through
they're sharp objects.
They're sharp objects. Yes. And then talking about sharp objects, syringes. Needle sticks are a problem in their industry, which is very sad. People should not be putting needle sticks or sharps.
Can I ask you something, Cheryl? What are the where do my batteries run out? I put them guilty again. Please don't come to me to tell me because I'm guilty. Where do I put my batteries? Where I dispose my batteries? Where I dispose my broken knife, so to speak? Where do I put them?
So recyclect.com is a great place for you to start, but I'll tell you, what I do is I have a little yogurt container and I collect all my batteries at once. And then your household hazardous waste event, every town has access to a household hazardous waste event. There is a webpage on Connecticut Deep's webpage that talks about where your local household hazardous waste event is. But you can also bring to a lot of retailers that participate voluntarily. Best Buy is one. Sometimes hardware stores. IKEA is another. Do you have stores in your town that do batteries?
I believe it's just Best Buy.
Best Buy, yeah, that's probably the best one.
Rachel?
In the town of Manchester, we accept batteries at our transfer station. So some
Okay.
municipalities do accept batteries there. Trying to think what else. So
Well, Cheryl mentioned
Yeah.
all kinds of syringes, utensils, ammo.
So
I mean,
one thing that people don't understand.
lithium batteries, which are very flammable.
Yes. One thing that people don't understand that I'm really trying to work on is that there are so many different things you can recycle at your transfer station that you can't recycle at home. So when you go into our transfer station, you can recycle mattresses, tires, what we call bulky rigid plastics. That's large plastic items that are rigid, as it sounds.
Kind of like my patio furniture, kind of
Exactly.
plastic chairs and things.
Exactly. We accept cooking oil, motor oil,
Electronics,
electronics,
Yes.
batteries,
textiles.
food scraps, metal.
Do you have a swap shop?
We don't have a swap shop
Okay.
yet.
Now,
Don't feel bad.
Now, you guys have to explain what swap shop, because you're like, you're talking to a lay person, so I don't know about
Yes.
swap shop.
So a swap shop is the same idea as the Buy Nothing Facebook group, where people just leave things that they don't want anymore that are still in good condition,
At
and
a
other
store?
people at sort of
Transfer station.
at the transfer station. It could be in a shed or a garage or Glastonbury. They even just have a spot where people leave things out, and then at the end of the day, what's not collected gets thrown away. But you just leave things and you can take things, no charge. So that's something that we're certainly interested in. We're going through some changes because we have a landfill. We have a landfill that is specifically for construction and demolition waste. So it's not for our residents' trash. However, things like furniture, which sadly not all of it is broken down. Some of it could actually have been used by somebody else, which is heartbreaking to us. Those things can end up in our landfill. And the landfill, we are hoping to expand it because we're running out of space.
Yes.
There's a certain elevation. When we reach that height, we're done, and it's going to close. And that is coming up very soon.
So what are your plans? So only for construction you mentioned, so it's not
construction and demolition,
accessible to
debris.
me.
That's right. And it's going to impact everybody because a lot of people bring their materials to the Manchester landfill. Is that correct? For commercial?
Yes. And in fact, that's a source of income for the town right now. That is what is paying for our trash and recycling. So the whole unit-based...
Wait a minute. So people, I'm just trying to understand. So people or construction people bring furniture or
so when they're
materials?
doing construction, they have things like wood. They've got sheetrock. They've got...
Right. And then people come and buy them from you, from
they
the site?
pay to dispose of it at our landfill. And then that money gets used towards all of our waste management programs.
Okay. And then, sorry, like maybe that sounds like a very simple question, but what do you do with the material that they drop? Do you recycle that material? Or what do you do with them in a way that will bring you more money? Or you don't? You just...
So they are required to go to a MRF, a material recovery facility,
Right.
to have as much of their waste recycled as possible. And whatever's left over at the end that can't be recycled, that is what comes to our landfill.
Okay.
You're listening to Keep It Clean for Happier You podcast. To listen anytime, go to dirtdirtgoaway.com. Also, you can live stream online at radio1400.am every Saturday.
My understanding is you cannot mix materials with contaminants, so you have to keep them separate, and it prevents you from recycling. I don't know if that's the problem.
So
Am I not understanding it?
It's a couple of things. One,
Cheryl,
a lot of people say,
enlighten us.
Okay. A lot of people say, we have no landfills in Connecticut. Well, we do have landfills, but they're not for our municipal solid waste. We have very few landfills. Some towns have their own landfill, and they can use it for something referred to as oversized MSW, but a better term is bulky waste.
Okay.
And that includes
Construction.
some construction, but it includes furniture. It includes when somebody's doing a renovation project and they're pulling out an old kitchen cabinet.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. Manchester's a little bit different because they actually have a commercial landfill. And so if I'm a renovator, I'm a carpenter, and I've just pulled out somebody's old kitchen cabinets and I put in some new ones, where am I going to bring all those materials? I bring them to Manchester. And so I pay a certain fee to do so. And when a landfill accepts them, they're going to crunch them up and bury them, because that's what landfills do. They bury all of that stuff. Now, if I'm doing a renovation project and I have to certify that there's no asbestos in there.
Okay.
And so an asbestos contractor comes in before any projects like this, whether it be demolition or renovation. And so what she's getting is, she's not getting any of the asbestos or the toxic materials that goes somewhere else. Is that sort of what you were thinking?
Well, I kind of wanted to know if people dumping them, if they're construction material, if that material can be reused, or we're not there yet.
So just like we have materials recovery facilities,
right,
we do actually have a couple of facilities that are just like that, where they come in on a line and then they're picked apart. And it is for construction and demolition material, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they pull out some clean wood. They definitely pull out cardboard. They might pull out a lot of 5-gallon buckets.
Yeah.
And just like Manchester's doing bulky rigid plastics, there's a market for that. And so it's a different type of recycling stream. However, I think we only have 2 or 3 facilities that do this in Connecticut. Most of the facilities that accept construction and demolition material, because the landfill is not the only one, really just sort of crunch it up and then send it to a landfill out of state.
Out of state. So this is another question. Is Connecticut facing a waste crisis? And if so, why? And what can we do to help it? This is Cheryl again. I'm sorry, Cheryl.
Cheryl's going to do the best job.
We're
of
going to bring her a
answering
gallon of water after this show.
All right. So, yes, we are experiencing a waste crisis. And I know Rachel shared how a waste to energy facility in Hartford closed. That facility is referred to as MIRA. And MIRA closed their waste to energy facility, and a third of Connecticut's waste, municipal solid waste, used to go there. And now that it's not going there, not only is Manchester impacted, but a lot of communities are impacted. And so what it does is it now pushes a lot of communities to send their trash out of state. And
that can be pricey, no?
It can be pricey. Of course, we're increasing, our carbon footprint, which is not great.
Right.
There are a lot of problems. And so that's why the state, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, is really trying to ramp up a number of initiatives. We are trying to get more businesses to recover their food scraps and other organic material for composting. We're trying to get municipalities to embrace unit-based pricing so that residents also get an incentive to do better. And then I know I'm hoping to work with schools this year and trying to provide resources for schools to do better. We also have a food recovery roadmap coming out, a food waste prevention, food recovery roadmap, to try to figure out how can we prevent food from being wasted as well as recover it. And so all of these are in response to trying to alleviate or at least reduce the impact of this waste crisis that we're experiencing.
So I have a final question here. What is wish recycling? and why through education we can all stop the practice. Because to me, sounds like wish recycling. That sounds funny. That sounds nice.
Yeah, it does.
But it's not nice.
No, it's not nice.
Okay.
Wish recycling is when you don't necessarily know that something's recyclable, but you hope it is, and you put it in the bin, hoping that it will be recycled.
So wishful thinking.
Exactly, wishful thinking. And in the end, those items may not be recycled at all. It's probably causing contamination to the recycling stream, or it could be causing a hazard at the facility, as Cheryl mentioned earlier. So it's really important that we're putting the correct things in the bin. Do you have anything to add, Cheryl?
No. I would just say, if you find out through this conversation or other future work that you do, because you go to the recyclect.com webpage and you find out you've been doing something wrong, don't feel too guilty. Just try to do better.
Yeah.
I just wanted to conclude our show without saying something that it's estimated 170 trillion particles of plastic are floating in our oceans per BBC 2024. We must do better, as Cheryl and Rachel so kindly spent the time with us here today telling us about it, households and companies alike. In closing, I want to ask both our guests a gem, a valuable tip from Rachel and Cheryl to share with us so we can do better.
Right.
Cheryl?
I'll go in a different direction. So you were just talking about plastics and the problem with plastics.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that because you were really talking about litter as well. Mm-hmm. And the number one item that's littered is tobacco products. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ask all smokers out there to do better by not flicking your butts out of your car, not leaving the butts at the beach, not leaving the butts at the parking lot, not leaving your butts anywhere except for a trash can. And that's because they not only have plastic, right? The filters are plastic, so people are breathing through plastic.
I had no idea, Cheryl.
But tobacco is also toxic. There's a reason we use tobacco as a pesticide. And so it can contaminate our waterways as well. So if anything, I encourage smokers to be a little bit more responsible in their own waste habits and not to litter.
Gee, I learned something. Rachel?
Okay. So
your final thoughts?
Cheryl mentioned what the top most littered item is. Well, the top, I want to say the top 8 most littered items, and this is for Connecticut, they're all essentially plastic-based, or the majority of them are. And they are all single-use items, you know,
Yes.
Your straws, your cups from the fast food restaurants, your wrappers, water bottles, condiments, you name it. And, you know, what's interesting about the funding for my position, the whole reason that the funding was created was because there are so many miniature liquor bottles on the side of the road. What people don't realize is it's actually part of a bigger issue. A lot of these miniature liquor bottles are coming from people who have an alcohol addiction, and they are drinking these bottles on a regular basis. They're doing it while they're driving, and then they're throwing the evidence out the window. So what we really need to do is we need to try to reach out to that community and help them with the addiction, encourage them not to throw their bottles out the window, because these plastics, you know, they don't break down, but at the same time, they do break down into smaller pieces. So they're still there, just in a smaller form called microplastics.
So that's part of the 170 trillion.
They break up
yes, the breakup.
Yes.
Yeah. And then fish ingest if they go into waterways.
Yes. Our aquatic life, they're eating those microplastics. It's making them feel full, but it's actually not a source of food for them, so ultimately it starves them. You know, there's been a movement to try to get away from straws, because straws can end up in our oceans. I mean, Some of the litter isn't intentional at all. Some of the litter is just because they're these items that are light and they escape us, or they escape the hauler or whoever's transporting it. And so if we get away from those items that can escape and end up in our waterways, then we're going to help the environment.
I want to point a little bit because I have a book in my hand. It says The Business of Less, The Role of Companies and Households on a Planet in Peril by Dr. Ronald Geyer. And it talks about there is no such thing as a win-win. When they say, the companies win, the households win, he said something has to give, because if you picking up on Rachel's one-time use items, that if we're the ones that we have the power of the purse, if we stop buying them, including me, when we were earlier, we're talking, and Cheryl said, "Are you?" She has the box with the one. The Greek dancing thing with the plates, that you have them wash them. I have to cut using something because it's convenient, because that's lazy. We have to stop this, because if we are to take responsibility and be good citizens for our homes and for our home in the globe, we have to stop being lazy and get the box that Cheryl was talking about with the Goodwill plates and wash them after a party, or break them for the Greek dance.
Or for an art project.
Or an art project. More for an art project, because I think breaking plates now even increases illegal, because, they're catching up. But my final thoughts is the planet gives us the water, the air, the temperature we need to survive and thrive. The least we can do is to care. We can all conserve by using less. And that's exactly what the business of less is all about. And there are many ways we can all make an impact. And I think it matters that we listen to Cheryl and Rachel's advice and input, because they are in the trenches. They're actually dealing with it every day in and day out. And they can give us advice. And the most important thing that both of you ladies mentioned is go to the specific website, because or if you're not in Connecticut, you're listening to us, go to your city and your state site and know the specifics of your city. And if something is not to your liking, fight for it. Make a difference. Instead of sitting around and say, okay, this is not something that I like. Well, make it to participate. That's the most important thing, that you can participate and make a difference, because you cannot say it's somebody else's problem. It's all our problem.
Absolutely.
And we have to make a difference. So you have the power of the purse. We should all use it wisely, I say. Thank you so much for our wonderful guests. I learned so much today. I hope you did too, to our listeners, because I learned things that I never knew, and I'm going to change my behavior too. Thanks to Cheryl Baldwin and Rachel Schnabel.
Thanks, Nikki, for the invitation. It was great.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you for taking time off from Saturday. It's Saturday we're taping this, and these ladies, they took time off to come here and educate all of us. And I'm grateful to both of you. Thank you so much.
We came to the end of the show. Keep it clean for happier you. I'm your host, Nikki Tamboulidis. Together with my team, we're working on more exciting conversations on how each one of us can make a difference at home and on a global scale. Yes, we can. Bye for now.
At Keep It Clean for Happier You, we'd love to hear from you. For your comments and questions, use contact form at dirtdirtgoaway.com or text Nikki, text only, at 203-581-3446. That's 203-581-3446. We will be here every Saturday. Tune in to Keep It Clean for Happier You podcast. You can live stream online at radio1400.am every Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. and listen anytime at dirtdirtgoaway.com.